Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar channel of the Association of Certified E-Discovery Specialists. My name is Mike Quadraro, and I am the president of ACEDS. Today, we are joined by our partner H5 for a webinar entitled Privilege Analytics, Privilege Logging, Save Time, Reduce Risk, and Rest Easy with H5 Matter Analytics Privilege Logging. Before we get started, please know that we love questions. We are happy to take your questions, and you can submit your questions using the Q&A widget located at the bottom of your screen. All questions are anonymous. Also, if you'd like a copy of the slide deck from today's presentation, you can download it from the resource widget at the bottom of your screen. Without further delay, I am thrilled to introduce Jason Richards and Christine Porras, who will be handling our presentation today. Jason, please take it away.
All right, thank you, Mike. And a big thank you to everyone joining us for the webinar today. I'm Jason Richard, VP of Products for H5. For those of you who aren't familiar with H5, we specialize in providing search and data analytics solutions to companies and law firms that help them find key facts and insights to address challenges in e-discovery, investigations, review, and other data management needs. I'm joined today by Christine Porras, Director of Technology Solutions for Oasis, who will be contributing her experience and insights with the wonderful world of privilege logging, as well as her experience with H5 Matter Analytics, given their extensive use of the product. Christine, do you want to share some details about yourself and Oasis?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and I'm really happy to be here with Jason as well. I've been in the list-up industry since 2001, so privilege logs have been the bane of my existence, as I'm sure they have been yours for a very long time. So I'm really excited to talk to you about all of the challenges that we face creating privilege logs today.
All right, thank you, Christine. So for the agenda today, we're going to do a brief overview of H5 Matter Analytics, which is the product that we'll be focused on showing off today with some of the new privilege log feature functionality. We're going to talk a little bit about what is a privilege log, do a little audience participation with a quick poll, and then Christine's going to give us a little bit of a tour of some common challenges of privilege logging and specific challenges that we're looking to address with H5 Matter Analytics. Then we'll hop in and do a demo of the product in action so you can see what we're up to. And then we'll end with some questions and answers. Okay, so to start, let's talk about H5 Matter Analytics. So it is a product built by experts for experts to accelerate review and knowledge acquisition. H5 has been in the business of developing technology for analytics and priv identification and PII identification, you name it, for nearly 2 decades now. And so we've been developing a lot of this technology largely at the hands of our own professionals at H5, but Matter Analytics is a product that we've developed from the ground up to be integrated inside of your Relativity or Relativity 1 experience. So in terms of the privilege workflows, which we'll be very focused on today, some of the benefits there being seamlessly integrated inside of Relativity. What that means is that all the data stays put. It's a closed system. There's no data leaving your Relativity environment to identify privilege or to develop the privilege logs that we'll show you today. Keeps the data safe and in place. And it also means that you're going to have the ability to get results very quickly because you're basically running a process inside of the application, inside of Relativity, and then the results are generated inside of the workspace. The product is accelerating and prioritizing privilege reviews. So we do that through tiering documents that we identify as being privileged. We also have some viewers that provide a great way to move through the results and get insights along the way to help mitigate risk. We're also reducing privilege review volume in a big way because of the way that we're more nuanced in what we look for. But we also have ways of avoiding things that are commonly sand traps for priv terms. So things like disclaimers and boilerplate language. We also have a number of great inputs for the priv log itself. But now, with what we'll showcase today, we have a capability to generate the end product. So go through and develop priv logs, be able to do a lot of things that folks commonly do, maybe in Excel or through a lot of scripts and gymnastics. So we'll show you how that's done right inside of Relativity through Matter Analytics. And all of this is in a very cost-effective and simple licensing package. Everything, whether it's the PII identification or the priv logging, all of that is at one price point inside of Relativity. Okay, so that's Matter Analytics. So now let's talk a little bit about what is a privilege log. So if you look at this in terms of a technical definition, Wikipedia calls it a document that describes documents or other items withheld from production in a civil lawsuit under a claim that the documents are privileged from disclosure due to the attorney-client privilege, work product doctrine, joint defense doctrine, and some other privilege. And in addition to that, there's information that needs to be provided to help describe why something is privileged. So it describes the nature of the documents, the communications or tangible things not produced or disclosed, and to do so in a manner that without revealing information itself privileged or protected will enable other parties to assess the claim. So very kind of dry definition. But if you talk to anybody who actually works with privilege logs, you get some interesting descriptions. So privilege logs are loathed by the attorneys who create them, the judges who review them, and the clients who pay for them, from a great article in the New York Law Journal. So that is I think a reflection of some of the pain that comes along with managing privilege logs. And today we'll be going over some new tools that Matter Analytics is going to introduce our customers to help address a number of these challenges and hopefully make the lives of the privilege log warriors out there a lot easier. So before we start to talk a little bit about the challenges, we've got a quick poll here that will start. So here we have a poll. How do you feel your e-discovery solutions are supporting your needs to create the privilege log? Meets my needs fully, meets my needs partially, or do they even know what I do for a living? So we're going to give everybody 1 minute to select an option here, and then we'll dig into some of the challenges that we're looking to address here. Okay, all right, with that, let's take a look at some of the results that we have here. Okay, looks like we've got a bit of a split, but it does look like the majority of you are having partial luck with the tools that you have available to get the job done. So again, hopefully we'll show you some things today that'll help close that gap, and especially if folks are very frustrated with some of the current state of things, give those folks some hope for some help here. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Christine to talk about some of the challenges that we're going to be focused on today, starting with a fun one, which is name normalization and name variants and the people that you're trying to manage. So Christine?
Well, I don't know about how much fun challenges with name variances are, but it definitely is the first challenge with creating a privilege log. Until you get your name normalization complete, you can't fully accurately identify all of your data until you have all of that information. So, and this, of course, is going to help you with the privilege log. You don't want to miss any names, and you have to identify all of those variations of the person's email information, different naming conventions within email data. For example, if you have documents within your privilege set that show up with the Gmail address, and that's not a business account, then there's a reason to question what they're even doing. So this is the part that can be extremely time-consuming, because we know that in the beginning, a lot of it is based on searches, right? You have your priv searches that you're trying to create, and you're trying to figure out all of the different variations for all the different names. And if you don't have that all normalized, that is extremely time-consuming. And that's when you're also going to have errors when you're trying to figure out all of that type of information. Next up, we've got our, once everything is normalized, here's when you're going to try to clearly identify who's who. And of course, that name normalization is crucial for that. But this is really the part where you're going to try to, it's going to make it easier to associate the titles and organize the people and understand your data set better. The ability to clearly identify who's who as you work through your privilege log is crucial. Who's in the metadata? Who's hiding in a header somewhere deep inside of a message? Has an email in your privilege log been seen by a third party? All of this can't be done until you deal with the name variances and all of that name normalization. Next up, Jason, thank you. Now, with that too is next is the assembly of creating an understandable privilege description to communicate why the document is actually privileged. And this challenge is really huge because a lot of the times this is where people kind of off-road it and put it into Excel and start, flexing their Excel formula muscles to try to, get a privilege log together. And this is where the confusion occurs because we're really forcing to create a privilege log into the format that it needs to be, but we're trying to do all of these type of edits kind of on the fly, trying to work within a tool. And this is where a lot of that manual work simply just continues to happen. And then you have all of the reconciling and going back, and this is where the inconsistencies and the errors happen a lot here because you're not really able to do it in one location. One person might have one description for something, another might have another for the exact same things, and that's where all of the inconsistencies are. And this is really, getting the details right. And I think that this is really where the pain is, right? The pain is, I think, between the previous slide and this slide is, getting the descriptions right and then getting the format right. And again, this also the reason that this is the painful part and the time-consuming part is because a lot of this is happening outside of the review platform. In this case, I mostly or really have ever used Relativity for a lot of my privilege logs. And even though it lives inside of Relativity, and a lot of the times we were using free type, text boxes and field information, because it was also outside inside of an Excel spreadsheet, it just became a nightmare to try to get the dates formatted, what's the name of the order of the people as they appear in the log, how can I magically delimit the information with multiple values? And last but not least is really those last minute revisions, right? You've given the privilege log over to someone, you thought it was complete, they come back to you, you're making those changes, and then you're going to have to still reconcile that into the database. So just trying to get something where everybody can actually see what's happening and have a privilege log that has all of those details correctly with the right description is time-consuming, it's painful, and, just as Jason mentioned in that last description from the Law Journal, I mean, across the board, everybody feels the pain.
Yeah, I don't think that I've seen more skill than some of the folks that I know that I've worked with search and replaces and things of that nature, and it's pretty intense, especially given how a lot of these applications are meant to store information, but they're not meant to freely edit information. So Excel becomes such a powerful tool. But anyway, this has always been interesting to watch in action. Okay. Well, thank you, Christine. That's excellent, and I think it sets us up well to talk a little bit about some ways that we're going to hopefully make folks' life a little bit easier here. So if we look at how H5 Matter Analytics works, with the identification of priv and the identification of those features that we provide to be an input to the priv log itself, it really starts with helping folks categorize who's who, and doing so in a way that's simple, easy, and really lets the system do the bulk of the work. And we'll show you some of the tools in the application, the ways that we can extract people and organizations and use domains to pre-categorize folks or email addresses. But this is really an important foundation to a lot of what the priv log is able to do and providing a lot more visibility and making everybody's life a little easier. The second piece here is a big one as well, which is how do I disentangle the message bodies from the headers? And I don't just mean sort of the top header and the rest of the email, but really each header within an email message. Emails are naturally aggregators. They aggregate a lot of messages. And so being able to understand where each of those headers starts and stops, where the message bodies start and stop, and being able to understand the direction of communication in each of those headers is really important, especially when it comes to priv reasons and things of that nature. And then three, being able to pre-train the system on how to identify what you're looking for while also avoiding some things that you don't want to look at. So we've actually pre-trained the system using a linguistic modeling approach, which is a little bit different than a machine learning approach. Some benefits that we have is that we can identify content, work well in different file types, would be Excel, et cetera, be able to highlight the excerpts that triggered our priv assessment, because we're actually going through and using a lot of the knowledge that we've developed over the past 2 decades on what are the different ways that people really express legal concepts. What types of documents are going to be considered subject to privilege claims, and be able to identify that while also training the system on how to identify disclaimers and boilerplate language, and be able to avoid those things that can create a lot of false positives. And so we'll show you a little bit about how this works in the application. And then fourth, which is very pertinent to today's discussion, generating privilege log inputs that are reliable, that are useful, and can be a part of the recipe that you generate with our new privilege log design studio module to be able to put it all together. And so we start with very strong name normalization. That's a key strength of the application, something that we've spent a lot of time developing, refining. And so our name normalization and our threading, which work hand in hand, are all our algorithms. So it's our experience with these algorithms in the wild that has really refined them to the level that they are, and can allow you to use them with very little cleanup. The privilege reasons are pretty sophisticated. It allows us to take criteria into consideration, such as, did we find mention of an attorney in an author field or in the first 100 words of a document, or did we find a client messaging their attorney? So direction of communication, where we're finding the attorneys, all of that plays a big role into the privilege reasons, and that gives the second pass review and the priv log a really big jump start to get to those details. Okay, so now we've talked a little bit about the challenges, we've talked a little bit about how Matter Analytics works under the hood, but now we're going to go ahead and do a live demo of Matter Analytics. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Let me make sure everybody can see my screen. Let me take a second. Actually, let me try that one more time. All right. And Christine, can you see my screen okay?
I can't. I just see the slide that says live demo.
All right. Let me try something here. How about now?
Nope. But I can't wait to see it. This is the fun part. Oh, you can? Okay, good.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So we're inside of relativity, obviously, for those of you that are veterans with relativity. And as we mentioned before, Matter Analytics is nested right inside of relativity. All the work that Matter Analytics does is up here under a tab inside of relativity. It's a wrap file that you can just install to workspaces to do all the fun things that we do. And all of the fields, all of the objects, such as our name normalization entities, all the tagging, everything is automatically generated in the product. And this is, I think, one of the big reasons that folks are drawn to it, because you're not dealing with some sort of external application and trying to pass information back and forth. It's very easy to manage and stay right inside of relativity. In terms of the fields of information that we're creating here, I'm just going to give you a little bit of insight into what's here and how this plays a role into our thinking on the priv side. So here we have a thread display, which is just our email threading display from our threading algorithm that helps with color coding inclusives. The blues are inclusives, for instance. We've got our potential privilege tagging, which is tiered, as we mentioned before. Starts off with attorney-client communication, then goes into attorney mentions, and then into general legal topics, which is where we get into those pre-trained legal concepts that know how to avoid disclaimers and so on. We also have, out of our privilege analytics output, things like priv waivers tags, so third-party communicators that are present. Things such as broad email distributions are also another thing that we can tag for. And these can be really helpful from a review prioritization standpoint. One thing that's important to note is that while name normalization is necessary to show to enable a lot of the feature functionality that you'll see in the priv logging, privilege analytics really helps enhance the review and gives you things like a privilege reason that you can incorporate into that privilege log. But all you need really is the name normalization to get a lot of the features that you'll see today. Our name normalization is, you can generate a number of different types of fields. You can do individual, do CC, BCC. Here we have a normalized sender, the from. We have a normalized participants at the top level. So just the folks that are sending and receiving emails at the metadata level. And here we have an all, which is everybody up and down the message. So those are folks that are maybe in a subsumed header or in a lesser header. And then as we move out, I've brought in some additional fields that are not matter analytics fields that are going to be important today for the PrivLog demo. So we've got some privilege action fields that are tags that the attorneys applied, a privilege document type, which is a value that the attorneys applied. We've got our H5MA auto reason, which is a byproduct of our privilege analytics capabilities. But oftentimes what folks do is they bring our reasons into their own, and then they just make adjustments. So for instance, down here, we can see that it looks like we had providing information to counsel for the purpose of seeking legal advice. There was an adjustment made to just make that requesting legal advice. So it provides a really good foundation, a real good starting position, and you can edit, adjust as the review team see fit. We also have a privileged subject matter, which the case team developed. That's not an H5MA field. And then a privilege with attorney, which is a fun field, which is not something that H5 Matter Analytics is going to generate automatically, but has been coded, at least in this hypothetical, by the review team. All right, so this is just a mix of how our privilege analytics results, our name normalization results, and the privilege coding fields can all be kind of blended together to now be a source for some of the work we're going to do on the privilege log side. All right, so now I'm going to hop over to Matter Analytics. So this is the set hub. This is where all of the sets are created. A set is basically a job. It's where you take a saved search, pick which algorithms you want to run on that saved search. You may want to run privilege analytics and threading and name normalization, or maybe you want to run PII identification. So there's different algorithms that can be managed here under our different algorithm tiers. But where we're going to start this conversation is actually looking at our entity profiles. This is where you're going to be doing work to help prepare the information for the privilege log. And when I say prepare the information, what I'm really talking about is categorizing people. When you run name normalization, you can actually just feed it domains to auto-classify folks so that when the job's done, you already have outside counsel identified, you might have the client identified, government agencies that may be a priv waiver or maybe opposing counsel. So there's things you can do at the beginning of the name normalization process that make this really easy and give you a strong foundation. But then you can come in and make different decisions. You may want to now tag people that work client as in-house counsel. You can do this by searching for specific people's names. You can also do things like use a search for email list. And this is really helpful because it's going to allow you to just grab an email list, search for it, find those individuals, and then update those individuals, their function to be in-house counsel. We have clients today that have, in some cases, 1,000 in-house attorneys. And they may have different departments, so they may want to tag 500 of them as one department in-house and the other 500 as a different department, and then have them play different roles from a priv perspective or prioritization standpoint. So very easy to get in, get folks categorized either at an individual or bulk level. And when these profiles are generated, again, name normalization is one of our key strengths as an application. So the cleanliness of the output, the reliability of the output is something that we feel gives folks the best tools for that privilege log. And when we talk about the name variance piece, the piece that Christine spoke to earlier on the slide with all the different variations, the application is going to be going through and detecting different variants, whether it's an MSN.com account, so a personal email account, different domains, maybe different work accounts, nicknames, things of that nature that maybe that we can detect based on email addresses that are repeated but with different names, and even Outlook strings and things like that. So we're going through and getting all that variance, turning it into one specific individual, and getting a good name, clean display name is a key strength of the application. and the associations we create. Those are all big strengths.
Something else we do. Another big
sure.
strength here, Jason, too, is with having the name normalization and your entity profiles, when you're actually reviewing the documents inside of the Matter Analytics viewer, in the thread visualization, you are looking at just that one name. So it's super clean when you're reviewing the documents, and this really helps with errors, right? Because you know that when you're picking Christine Porras, it's, CGP at Oasis Discovery, Christine at Oasis, like all of that work is done here. But when you're reviewing, you're only seeing that super clean name. So that's another really big plus.
Excellent. Yeah, and we'll show you a little bit about how that actually looks in the priv log itself. But yeah, that's a big part about helping maintain awareness of who folks are. All right, so we've talked a little bit about who the people are, some of the name variants that we extract and associate. We also do something related to priv for priv actors, which is identify where folks are being mentioned in message bodies or documents. And we actually learn about what to look for based on what we discover in the headers. So we have logic to help us find things like nicknames and different email address variations, or even middle initials based on some logic in the system. We're not going to look for just Kim, because ultimately there needs to be some amount of validation, or else you're just going to get a lot of false positives and a lot of things that are going to make you want to pull your hair out. So we do have some, we're more discerning in what we look for, but we do automate that process to identify those mentions to help complement what we're doing at a header level. All right. So the other way that you can categorize people and get them described with a function that's really going to help you on your priv, both on the priv analytics side, but also on the priv log, is using organizations. So organizations are another form of entity that we generate through name normalization. This is where we go through and identify, based on domain name, the different organizations that are communicating in the data, and then we auto-recognize certain domains or organizations based on domain libraries that we have. So we know how to find personal email accounts based on a list of hundreds of personal email domains that we've accumulated across the world, government agencies, educational institutions, and then law firms. And so law firm is going to be a list of all of the firms that we detected, not ones that you had to pre-program or tell the system to look for. We have a list of nearly 2,000 law firms that we look for. And this is a great tool to work on with the client on, or with your colleagues on, to really make sure that you've got the right coverage from an outside counsel perspective, from an opposing counsel perspective. Make sure folks are having the appropriate impact on your priv assessments. You can explore individual sets here to take a look at who's in the firm themselves, what people did we detect. So here we've got a number of folks here with Quinn Emanuel. You can make individual decisions on these folks to mark them as outside counsel or co-counsel. But you can also select multiple organizations from here and update all the people that belong to those organizations with that particular function. So maybe the outside counsel or what have you. So it just gives you a great way to manage those functions, get folks categorized in an easy way, and then you're ready to do all kinds of things. And when I say all kinds of things, I'll show you just a quick preview of privilege analytics, but then we're going to spend most of our time here with our thread viewer, or sorry, with the privilog module. So with privilege analytics, the way the functions play a role is that it allows us to identify who is communicating, who's being mentioned that has an impact on your priv assessment. Our set reports, if you haven't seen Matter Analytics before, start with some information about the saved search, the custodians, the date range, but then you can get into the individual algorithm cards to see all the additional detail. So in this case, we have 31% of the population is potentially privileged. As I come down, I can see how those results break down from a tier perspective on those different tiers we look for. We have document level details, family level details. As you get into the priv waiver chart here, you can see who are the folks that are having the biggest impact on priv waiver assessments as third-party communicators. And the nice thing is that as you look at this, you can find out about who these people are. because these reports are interactive and give you a lot of information. And you can even go explore individuals from here, find out who they communicate with, and do a lot of deep digging into your analysis. Certainly, our attorney-client communicators, our priv reasons that are being assigned, our attorneys being mentioned. So lots of good information here that can be discovered. And you may discover that there might be two profiles that need to be merged. So sometimes name normalization does require a little bit of cleanup, and this allows you some insights early on to be able to manage that.
And the reports are super helpful. Like, it really does provide such a great conversation and a planning tool with your case team, and it really focuses on a lot of the great actionable information. And I can also say setting up the algorithms is super easy as well. Like, once you configure the application and setting up the actual sets, like setting up those different algorithms, it's just a couple of choices. You know, with Priv Analytics, it's a little bit more, but the learning curve is really small. And that's been really great for our administrative team, but then also for our clients that are actually using the product and going in and creating the sets and using the reports to help move their projects forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And we try to make that collaboration as easy as possible. So you can share reports with a message or a link. And as long as they have permission to access this tab in Relativity, they'll be sent right here to look at the information. And you can also export the reports to HTML or PDF. So lots of different ways to get this information in the hands of those that need to make an informed decision and get folks to work. Okay, so that's one thing you can do with those functions, which is to create the privilege analytics outputs. And privilege analytics will give you some new tools, and I'll show you which ones those are to help in the priv logging. But let's take a look at the priv log tab here. So this is a new capability we've added to the product, and it's really meant to be a design studio for all things privilege log. We've got two logs that are here right now. One has already been finalized. I can tell that because it says that it's been finalized. We have a priv doc ID range here. And then we have one that's in progress. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on the one that we have in progress. And we'll take a look at the display here. So what you're seeing here is a priv log in progress. The columns here are really meant to be the ones that ultimately end up in the log. But you can spend time here with other fields. We have some fields here that you may not want from in the log, the final log, but you may want from a QC standpoint. So I'll start off talking a little bit about QC before we get into some of the fields you may want to generate. I'm not in edit mode, so my options here are a little bit limited in terms of what I can see out of what's in this log today. But some things I can do, I can navigate directly to a document by clicking on this. It'll open a tab in Relativity. One nice thing is you can actually have this tab on a second monitor while you have a document list up in Relativity. And sometimes having two Relativity document lists is a problem. And a lot of times with priv logs, you need to do some back and forth. You're doing some exploration. So you can actually carve this out and work on this on a separate window as you're doing your Relativity work. You can preview documents very quickly. So I can click on this and be able to see which document is currently associated. It's going to take a little bit of a second to warm up here for my first document. But what it does is it provides a preview that allows you to look at the document without having to navigate to it. I'll give this just a second to warm up. We also have the name normalization output here, and I've got these fields selected for a reason. So first we have the normalized from, which is, so this is the sender. We have our normalized recipient. So this is everybody that is in the 2CC or BCC. I have a normalized email participants, which is everybody up and down the message. So if they're in a subsumed header or buried somewhere. And then I have something very unique to Matter Analytics, which is a thread network. This is a really powerful field because what it's doing is showing you not just who's on the email that you're looking at, it's also giving you a peek into the future because it's everybody that will ever be a part of the thread. And so especially when it comes to third-party waiver, being able to find out if there's a third party hanging out further down the chain can be really helpful from a QC standpoint. So we'll show you that in a second. Let's see, okay, this loaded. Just gonna preview again. This should go really quick now. Okay, perfect. So this is meant to be a very quick preview so you can just get in, look at the documents. You can't edit them from here, but you can get a sense of what's there as you go through your review. So these are some of the read-only features, but what I want to do is actually edit. So I'm going to click on edit, and now some new things have come into view. Now I have an eye icon over here, and what that does is actually allows me to turn off documents in the priv log that I don't want to ultimately be in the priv log. So you don't have to adjust your search, you don't have to carve out a document ID or whatever gymnastics you want to do. It's as easy as reviewing the documents and then finding a document that has a third party, such as the case here, and just clicking it on and off to turn it off. And that means that it won't get a priv doc ID, it won't be added to the ultimate priv log. It's just going to be in here in sort of suspension until maybe in the future you decide to do something different with the document. Another nice thing about our names here is just like in our reports, if we want to explore who somebody is, I can click on a name and find out who they are. Albert Stein is the VP of Priv Breaking, which is obvious here. Not your company is his business. So I can come in here and explore details. And again, I can go to people's profiles and find out more about them. And we even have communications analysis if you want to find out who does that person actually communicate with. Looks like Albert's got a limited role here, so he's only got some people that he sends to and receives from. But this is just a way of understanding sort of the network that people keep within your data. Another powerful feature here, as I come down, when it comes to the thread network, is that ability to recognize somebody that is a third party that's hanging down further down the chain. So in this case, I've got Albert Stein in my thread network field, but he's not a participant in this email. So if I open this email, my preview, I can take a look at it and look for Albert Stein here. He's not in the email. He's not in any of these headers. Okay. So now I'm going to go to the document and figure out what is he doing hanging out on this document. And if you haven't used Matter Analytics before, haven't seen a demo of Matter Analytics, one of the big features that we offer that's a big differentiator with the product is our thread viewer. The thread view provides a lot of context, a lot of insights across the entire conversation. You can even review the whole conversation at once. This has 27 documents because there's a lot of duplicates in here, so it takes a second to come up. But here, I'm on the document where I saw Albert Stein in our thread network field. If I look at message number 5 here, which is the one with a halo around it, that's the document I'm on. And sure enough, there's a juncture here where it was forwarded to a third party. So with this, I can actually tell that the message that I'm on was eventually forwarded and now read by that third party, and that could have an impact on my priv waiver decisions here. So just a really helpful QC tool, something that can really help you protect yourself against some surprises or some embarrassment from accidentally logging something that eventually was read and consumed by a third party. All right, so the other thing that you get through the edit mode here is an ability to modify any custom fields that you create for your priv log. And you can actually create free text columns, so you could just type in like you would an Excel cell. You can create combined fields, which I'll show you, and that's actually what this field is here. It's a combined field to create a privilege description. But we give you the ability to simply make changes. Maybe I'm coming down here and want to say, ooh, that should be draft document reflecting legal advice, that one too. And then I can just save it. And now that information is going to be memorialized for my ultimate production, or sorry, for my ultimate privilege log. But what I want to show you is another great feature in the product, which is the creation of combined fields. And this is something that, as Christine mentioned in the slides, is hard today because you're trying to combine different fields. You've got formatting to think about and all kinds of different things that can cause you grief. So when you create a combined field, the first thing it's going to ask you is, what do you want the column to be named for your priv log? I'm just going to call it priv demo description, but it could be anything. It could be, maybe I want to create an author field where it's using name normalization from sometimes and then using just the author value another time. You can really get in here and create some neat conditions and do some neat stuff. But with document selection, you can create a rule here, or a combined rule that applies to all documents, or you can get more specific and have conditions where you can have different document types or different scenarios get different field combinations. And so this is exactly what I'm going to show you here. So I'm going to say create a condition. I'm going to be given a list of all the fields in relativity that I have access to that the system knows how to recognize. I'm going to go for with attorney. This is always a fun one. This is a multi-choice field. And I'm going to create a condition that says anytime I have a with attorney value of these two, I want it to do something. So I'm going to click add. And now anytime that those conditions are true, it's going to do whatever I put here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select fields by just using an @ sign. I'm going to start off with a privileged document type. I'm then going to go to a privileged reason. So whenever it says something like email, it was providing legal advice, then I'm going to say RE for regarding. So I can add free text right in the middle of my combination. Now I'm going to choose privileged subject matter, which was, again, one of those fields we had in that source search that I showed you before with all the fields, the mix of H5 values and the attorney coded values. I'm going to do with, because we're using our with attorney condition. Now I'm going to choose privilege with attorney. So I've got my fields here that are going to be separated with some free text. And now the great thing is I can test it, see what it does. So now I can see, and what it's going to do is get a sampling of documents that met that criteria. I'm going to be able to see it play out and see exactly how everything plays out. In fact, I can hover over this to see what elements are coming from specific fields to make sure this is what I want. Now, this is powerful, this is great, but one of the things that's always challenging is the details, so formatting. Now, if I look at this, I've got email that's lowercase, which I don't love. I've got providing legal advice, or providing in general has an uppercase, which I don't love. Everything else looks okay. So what I can do is actually just click on these individual names, the field names, now that we've created them as a part of our rule, and change how I want the capitalization to work. I can change how I want the second piece to be no letters capitalized. If I look at privileged subject matter, sometimes it is a capital because we've got Susan as a subject matter here, and then sometimes it's not. So I'm actually going to leave it as the original formatting. I think that looks fine. But then with privileged attorney, because we're contextually aware of what field we've added, that includes a date field. I can change date formats. If it's a multi-choice field, I can change how I want the multi-values to be separated. You can do an Oxford comma or no Oxford comma. So I'm going to choose just A, comma, B, and C. And then what I can do is rerun my test to see how that formatting then plays out. So it just gives you a lot of flexibility here to manage those details and get to the format that you want, and then you can go ahead and create it and add it to the log. Now, you may not be done. You may have other rules. You've got a with attorney condition here, but now I want to add another one. You can add another condition and just keep building conditions after conditions, get really complex. And the nice thing is you can save this after the fact as a template. And now any priv logs that you create in the workspace, you'll be able to use this template over and over and over again, and it already knows the formatting. It already knows the field combinations. It knows the conditions. Or you can just do simply all remaining documents. So lots of flexibility here to create so those details, the field combos, any way you see fit. All right.
And this really helps with a lot of the errors that we were talking about before, right? Because normally this would historically happen in Excel or half botched inside of like relativity, trying to get it to where you need it to be. But at least here, you're seeing everything. I'm really excited about this module, and it would have saved me hours of work and just pain in general with creating it. So this is really great.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Christine. And so there's other bells and whistles here that I won't get too far into just given time, but you have an ability to bring in any relativity fields to be a part of your log. You can sort things and group things how you see fit. By default, we're grouping families together. You can also export to Excel. You can change things, save templates, all that good stuff. But a really important feature that I do want to show is the ability to finalize a log. So when you finalize a log, it's going to do a couple things. The first thing it's going to do is edit the permissions to make sure nobody can edit it any further. It's going to basically memorialize things to be frozen in that state. You also have an ability to either pick an existing field to be your document identifier, or you can actually create, similar to a relativity production, a privlog doc ID. and then you can just pick the prefix, the number of characters, and the starting number, and then it'll go through and assign that number to all the documents. And then it also takes the privlog doc ID, if you created one, and any custom fields that you generated, and adds them to an object in relativity so that you can incorporate that into your document searches. And again, it's memorialized. It's representative of that final state on the privlog. So it's a great way to take the information you're doing here and get it into relativity and really encapsulate what that privilege log was. Okay. So this is the privlog builder. I'm going to take a look at a saved search here just to show you how this information can make it into relativity and be a part of your workspace from that point forward. I'll give relativity a second to load some document lists here. Okay, so here's the source that I was on, which was a lot of the inputs and a lot of the details that we were going to use as a part of our privilege log. Now I'm going to click on finalized. So finalized is representative of details that I may have wanted in my final log to be a part of that final privilege log that I'm going to create. And this is a development environment that might be a little under-resourced here. Let's see if it'll look for us. There we go. All right. So a couple things to show here. We've got our privilege log doc ID that's been assigned to the documents. So in this particular finalized log, which was that privlog 1, I did assign a specific naming schema to assign an ID. I've got some other fields that I've brought in here. And then I've got that custom field. I've got that field that used the combination of different details to create that information. And again, now this is all encapsulated in a part of the privilege log experience. All right. So that concludes the product demo portion of what we wanted to show today. And so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And we're going to get into questions and answers. So let me stop sharing.
Fantastic, Jason, great job. So there are a few questions in the queue. Anybody who has questions, please put them into the Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen. And so I'll just dive in here, Jason, with the questions that have been posted. So the first question is, the privlog option is only available after the priv algorithm runs? Question mark?
Yeah, no, good question. So privilege analytics is going to be responsible for giving you things like a privilege reason. It's going to give you the tier designations on the documents. It's going to highlight the privileged content in the documents and the viewers. But you don't need it to get the privlog feature functionality. Name normalization and some of the function adjustments and categorization that you do is all that's necessary to get the color coding and the participants field. You do need threading to run to get that thread network field, which is a really nice feature from a QC perspective. But that's all you need to get that color coding. The other thing is that if you have Matter Analytics and you installed it to a workspace and you didn't run any name normalization, you didn't run any threading, anything, the privlog building module is still active. It's still available to you to use with any inputs that you may have and customize those details, create combined fields and other things. But with our Matter Analytics features, it does really help make that module come to life and give you some much better tools on the QC side.
Okay, great. Next question is, how well does the privlog option work with large volumes of data?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, so the privlog builder is meant to handle large volumes of data. So we had a small sort of 35 document demo set, but it's been tested with hundreds of thousands of documents and can really do a good job even on big data sets. We're really meant for this to be something that folks can use on your big second request or on your smaller matters. There's not really a big size limit on what you want to do. But yeah, so it's meant for both big and small projects.
Okay. Next up, we've got a great international question. I'm in New Zealand and we don't have a sophisticated privlog, but most of what this app offers we need. can we customize some of the features you showed to meet our environment? Example, updating the law firm list you currently have as part of your product.
Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah. Yeah. So the product allows for a significant amount of user definition. So when you run name normalization, you can actually pre-categorize and just pop in domains and tell it, hey, these are law firms. So even if we don't recognize it and we haven't considered it as a part of our existing library, and if you have law firms, we'd love to get a hold of those. We're continuing to grow the application with nearly every release. We've got hundreds of law firms we're going to be adding hopefully soon. But you can categorize law firms just as easily as you can categorize people's functions. It's really simple. So yes, you can definitely use the user definition. The email headers, all the identification of people and organizations. The nice thing is that we have a release coming out later this year that where you're going to be able to port that information over from matter to matter. So to the extent you're building your own solution, your own recipe, you'll have portability across matter so that it's always replicating those things that are best fit for your clients.
Great, thanks. So you mentioned headers, and we had a question come in about halfway through, certainly during the demo portion. I'm wondering if you could recreate this verbally because the demo has ended. Could you please help to understand what you mean by headers and maybe show an example? What do you mean by headers when you reference that in H5 Analytics?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. So when I talk about headers, what I'm talking about is really replies in an email. So for instance, if I were to send an email to you, Mike, and then you responded back, we would have essentially two headers. One header would be Jason to Mike, and the other header would be Mike to Jason. And so being aware of the direction of communication, who's sending, who's receiving, is an important part of our ability to get the names extracted. So even if all you had was your email where you sent it to me, we'd still be able to find people that were in those subsumed headers or those lesser headers and pull them out to the surface to make sure you've got a full cast of characters sitting there in a field on who's in the email.
Okay, cool. All right, here's another question came about halfway through. If you turn off the Privlog view by clicking on the icon, that's I-E-Y-E, con. Just thought that was kind of cool. How are those flagged for future reconciliation, either logging or production?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what happens when you turn those off is they certainly will not be a part of they won't get a priv doc ID. They won't get a place in the ultimate priv log and finalized details, including all the combined fields. But they are there, and they do need to be considered for future use. You can produce documents in subsequent logs that you had in prior logs because we're using relativity objects. So you can have maybe different jurisdictions or whatever the case. But it's a good question. I'm trying to recall exactly how we audit and track those. I don't want to lead you wrong, but yeah, it's a good question, and we'll look to hopefully follow up afterwards. Okay,
cool. So here's a 2-for-1 deal. 2 questions, separate answers, but related. Is one entry per family priv log supported, and is categorical log supported?
So I'll take the, actually, what was the first question? Sorry.
Is one entry per family priv log supported?
Yeah, good question.
So it's grouping a family as opposed to itemizing each doc.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So today, what documents end up in the priv log is all dictated by the saved search. So if you wanted to have one item per family, as long as the saved search has been created in such a way that you've got the items that you really want to have on that log, we're just going to take that information and bring it in. We do have some neat features coming later this year that are going to provide some additional, especially with threading and other things, some dates that'll allow you to understand like where the thread ends and starts and things like that, that'll provide you some neat ways on the thread level. But that's how it works today. On the categorical, we actually have one of our partners, Gulfstream Legal, who has done some really cool things on the categorical privlog side using our name normalization output. And we're actually going to have hopefully a case study here shortly to release. But what they've been able to do is develop their own relativity application that takes our name normalization details, which are just sitting in tables in relativity because we're deeply integrated in relativity, and is able to pair that with other metadata features and create a categorical log by just collating and formulating the output based on these categories, which is really, really cool. So kudos to them for some really innovative thinking and development there. We don't have categorical privilege logging in Matter Analytics today, but I've been really encouraged with some of the custom things that folks have been doing with our output.
Okay, cool. Next question, Jason, is for the Privlog templates. Is that workspace specific, or can it be available across all workspaces?
Yeah, good question. So we are working on a pretty large update to Matter Analytics, which will allow templates across workspaces. But today it is workspace specific, but we will have cross workspace templates in fairly short order, if not by the end of the year, very shortly thereafter. So we're getting close.
And what version of H5 introduced the Privlog?
Yeah, so the version with the Privlog builder is 2.7.3, which is lining up for general availability next month. So we're hoping to get that as soon in November as we can, but it's very, very close. But 2.7.3 is the version to keep an eye on.
Okay. One more question. I can't seem to get the audience member writes, not me. I can't seem to get clean results with relativity name normalization. Did you come up with your own tech, or do you use the relativity structured analytics set?
Yeah, good question. So all of the analytics that we use, the threading, the name normalization, is all based on our own structured analytics. And that was really important because to do priv identification well, which is a very sensitive task, you need to have very, very strong threading and name normalization. So I'd say if you have not been pleased with what you're seeing out of relativity analytics, give Matter Analytics a shot, because I think what we found is customers have begun to see that as sort of the gold standard. And we've got a lot of, one of the things that is different about us is we've used this technology for many, many years. We've refined it on real data with real customers, working with really complex and varied industries and so on. So I think you'll see, you'll be very pleased with the output in terms of how much thought's gone into everything from the display name to the associations that we make, how we handle things like auto mailers and all kinds of good stuff. So there's a lot of good tech in there.
And I can attest to the fact that the name normalization is so much more cleaner, and the fact that you are able to see it within your visualization is huge. So I would definitely give it a try if you have been using relativity name normalization and aren't happy with the output.
All right,
awesome. Great. So we've reached the end of our questions, unless, no, that's not a question. It's a comment on your radio DJ voice, Jason.
Well, thank you.
Someone believes you should consider a career as a radio DJ. That's awesome. No, you do have a great voice. And so I think that brings us to the close. Do you guys have any closing comments?
No, I really appreciate everybody's time today. We're super excited to get the latest and greatest out to the market and really start to help folks deal with some major pain points here. But yeah, we look forward to hopefully working with folks in the future in their own environments and their own data.
Awesome. Christine, any closing thoughts?
No, I'm just very excited to do this presentation with Jason and with you guys. So thank you so much.
Fantastic. Okay, thanks everyone for joining us on the ACEDS webinar channel. Thank you to Jason and Christine for a great presentation. And of course, H5, you can learn more at h5.com. They did a great presentation today. Please visit aceds.org for a complete list of our upcoming webinars. Have a great day, everyone, and be kind to one another.
Thanks,
All right,
Mike.
excellent. Thanks, Mike.
Bye.